awesome. I want to read your notes. How are you guys? Wow, we got people up here. Oh, it's good to see all of you. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, packed house. Well, of course. Why wouldn't they be here for you?
I can think of many reasons.
Well, John, very welcome. It's your first Dublin Comic Con. Have you been enjoying it so far?
Yes, very much. I mean, obviously the reception is spectacular. It's great fun. I was in Ireland about 25 years ago and did a road trip, and I'm going to do the same thing starting on Monday and then go back home on next Sunday.
Oh, very nice. Because you do actually have a nice sort of connection to Dublin and actually to the Abbey Theatre, because you appeared in Dancing at Lunasa when it was brought over from the Abbey to the States, to Broadway, wasn't it?
That's right. We were at the Plymouth Theatre. I played Jerry Evans, the Welsh wastrel. That was one of the most memorable moments of my career, actually. Of course, the writing of Brian Friel, you know, you can do that 8 times a week, and every time you do it, you find something new.
Because that was one of your early roles as well, wasn't it?
Well, it was actually right after what they call Flash 1.0. It was in 1992, 93, yeah.
Because initially, when I was researching for this panel, I did actually learn that, you know, drama wasn't your first major in college, was it?
Busted.
Would you like to tell everyone what it was?
Well, it's a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. No snoring in the first row, please. No, I started studying piano from like the age of 4. My first piano teacher had to teach me the alphabet, and then I went on to study organ, and then went to Indiana University in a voice performance scholarship in the opera theater department. And then after a couple years of that, I switched my major to theater, and then I dropped out and moved to New York to continue my studies.
It must have been kind of a strange sort of jump. Well, not totally strange, but like from going from opera to drama was kind of a...
Well, in music, what always attracted me, whether it was keyboards or whether it was vocal, is the dramatic element. You know, the truth that moves behind the notes. Or in acting, the truth, hopefully, that once in a while appears behind the words.
And then soon after you finished up, sure, you got the part in Guiding Light, wasn't it?
Well, I moved to New York many of you weren't alive. It was 1976, I think, the fall of 1976. And I'm such a relic, I did Showtime's first original movie, which was called The Dirtiest Show in Town. It was on Off-Broadway. It was the best of Off-Broadway series. They did Me and My Girl, The Passion of Dracula, and The Dirtiest Show in Town. My mom said, you had to be in The Dirtiest Show in Town. You couldn't have been in Me and My Girl or Passion. I said, well, you know, we do what they offer. Then right after that, I was offered Guiding Light, played Kelly Nelson, med student extraordinaire, and Kevin Bacon was my dressing room mate on Guiding Light. So you're all 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon now. And then I went on to As the World Turns, and I started as a really good guy, and I went all the way out to complete psycho. It was an incredible way to
the baddest of all the baddies, really.
He was really bad, and I kidnapped Julianne Moore. So you're all now 2 degrees of Julianne Moore. And, you know, took her to the hideaway, and, you know, I was stabbed in the back with a crystal cylinder during a rape attempt. It was all very dramatic, very dramatic.
Well, sure, that's American daytime soaps, really, in a nutshell.
Yeah, yeah. So many are gone now. So many are gone. There's only a handful left.
2 or 3, isn't it?
Yeah, only 2 or 3. The only ones that are left are the ones I didn't do. I don't take all of the blame, but...
No, of course. Like, how could anyone blame you for that? No. It's probably after you left and then it kind of just fizzled out.
Yeah. I think that's it. We're going to go with that story.
Because you won your first Emmy for playing the big baddie as well.
Of course I had a lot of help, didn't I? I mean, no better actress than Julianne Moore to be your leading lady. And we had Julia Pagano, who understudied Zoe Caldwell on Broadway in Medea. And we had Steven Weber, who was on Wings. I don't know if you're aware of Steven Weber, did a lot of theater. He was in that story. And of course, the awesome regulars. You know, they had some great actors. Helen Hayes, First Lady of the American Theater, said that some of the best acting that you'll see anywhere is done on daytime. And I would add an addendum. I'd say also the worst. And before anyone laughs, that's the nature of the beast. Imagine doing 5 hours of television a week. It's in fact, while I was doing Dancing at Lunasa, they asked me to come on and play another dirtbag. It's like Carter Jones. And so I was doing 20 to 30 pages of dialogue a day at the peak of that storyline on All My Children, and 8 performances of Dancing at Lunasa a week at the same time.
Must have been a grueling schedule.
Oh, it was exhilarating. It was so exciting. I did hemorrhage a vocal cord right before the end of the run of Dancing at Lunasa, and had to go on complete vocal rest. And that gave my understudy a chance to do the last week of performances. So good on him.
Yeah, so you were just being helpful. Really.
I was just being helpful. I go to any lengths.
Because for some of the roles that I think some of us would be more familiar with you playing, the characters that you've actually like won awards for, they're the complete opposite. They are the baddest of the bad. They're the villains and all this. Which do you prefer?
You know, to back up just a little, you know, when Grant Gustin was first announced as the new Flash, there were all, you know, you guys are nothing if not loyal. The comic book audience actually mirrors the daytime TV audience in that. You know the history, you know the characters, you know the stories, you know when you're being conned, you know when something rings true, even if it may be a little different from the comic book version. I've totally lost my train of thought. What did you ask me?
Do you prefer playing villains or the good guy?
Oh, well, the thing with villains is they're always active. Oh, they said about Grant Gustin. They said, he was on Glee. He played a villain on Glee. He can't be a superhero. I said, wait a minute. When I came to The Flash, I was carrying 2 Emmys. One was for a woman abuser on Santa Barbara. Another one was for a psycho on As the World Turns. So actually, he's continuing a tradition. The thing about bad guys is, and the reason that you win awards playing bad guys is because they stir the pot, don't they? They come in, they know exactly what they want, they know exactly what they're willing to do to get it. And the challenge with playing a hero or a good guy is how do you keep that guy active? Because so often he's responding to the actions of the villain. So that's what I found challenging over the course of a season as the Flash in 1990 was, because it's so much fun and the writers get excited. New actors come in. Mark Hamill comes roaring in as the trickster. Of course you want to write for that. But at the same time, everybody has to work together. And I think they're doing it so well in the current Flash of continuing to write interestingly for Grant, because he is the Flash in the Flash, and everyone, including the production team, needs to remember that and make sure that they're not getting seduced by all the supervillains, and leaving him in their wake.
You just mentioned Mark Hamill there, of course, coming in, because he was in The Trickster in your Flash series, and then again now as he claimed the role in the new series as well. How was it seeing him just go straight back into character again?
It's great. He said to me, when they called him, he had been watching the show, he said, because he knew I was on it, and he and I have maintained contact. He's such a great guy. He and the whole family, Mary Lou, Chelsea. There are pictures of Chelsea as a little infant baby with trickster hair. And
so
me,
cute.
back in 1990, when now she's a very beautiful young lady and works with him. Yeah, it was great. He said to me when they called him to come on the new show, he thought, well, I'll probably be some associate of Henry Allen's and maybe a doctor or something. And they said, oh, no, we want you to come back and play the trickster. And he said, what? I probably shouldn't tell you. He said, I could barely work the unitard 25 years ago. What are they thinking? But they had a brilliant answer. They had a trickster wannabe, and then they let him, I'll never forget, it was brilliant, movies, television, anything, that first moment of seeing Mark in the new show, where it seems like he's suspended in the lotus position, and you come up on him and he looks, and it was like, oh, okay, I get it. The trickster, who was pretty twisted to begin with, has been in Iron Heights for 24 years, 25 years. So all of that madness that was running through his veins has now turned to poison. And I love the way Mark played that. It was really bone-chilling, And one thing about Mark, and then they said, well, you come back and be in Earth 3. You and John do, and now I'm Jay Garrick. And he said,
Spoiler alert.
okay, but if you'll let me play this version of the trickster, and it goes back to a silent movie, The Forgotten Man or The Silent Man, whatever it was called, which was the original inspiration for the original trickster in the comics back. I mean, he's very well versed in the roles that he does. And it's just his enthusiasm and the way he throws himself 100% into whatever he does that makes him a really worthy adversary.
Definitely. And because let's take it back to like your Flash.
Yes.
Starting out, you get the call. They're thinking about bringing in a Flash TV series. Batman is all the rage. And what was going through your head when the call first sort of came in? Like, was there any hesitation, or were you like, "Yep, that's it. I'm going to do that"? Nope.
No, I had been in New York. I had been on Broadway already at that time in a play called, it was 3 one-acts actually with Harvey Fierstein. And I had done regional theater, and I had my daytime Emmys, and so I was headed to California. I did The Never-Ending Story 2, and right after that, the casting director of that movie became my manager. He said, John, you have to come to L.A. now. And so I did. I did a project with Jack Scalia, and then the call went out about this superhero show, and I was a fan of the 60s Batman show as a kid. I loved that. Zoom, thwoosh, pow, kaboom, and the tights and everything. And I thought, well, I don't think I'd be very good at doing that, and that's not really where my aspirations as an actor lie. And so I wasn't that keen on it, but I talked to April Webster, multiple Emmy Award-winning casting director for such projects as Lost, and I've known her for years, and she talked to me on the phone. She said, John, just read it. She said, just read the script, that's all I ask. And I read Paul DeMeo and Danny Bilson's beautiful hour-and-a-half script that was the movie that became our pilot. And I'm noticing, this is Barry in this treatment is the unblessed son of a cop family where real cops work the streets. And his older brother, again in our version in 1990, named Jay, was a street cop and obviously his father's favorite. His father, played by Emmett Walsh, the great Emmett Walsh, legend, would always say, my mother would say, be careful, Barry, and Emmett would growl, what's he going to do, stump his toe on a footprint, And so there was that kind of contention going on. I was working in the crime lab, so my mom didn't have to be concerned about having more than one son after having a husband on the street. And so in spite of that, Jay and Barry are very close, played by Tim Thomerson. And then this accident happens in the lab one night, and Barry starts to realize he's reaching for a cup and it smashes against the wall. He goes for walking a dog. They end up in the bushes. He goes to catch a bus, and he ends up 35 miles away, whatever it was, in the ocean. And all those scenes were very interesting to shoot because we had to do live action effects then. We couldn't turn to our digital doubles. In other words, we couldn't go and then say, okay, take over digital double. I mean, we had to do all of that stuff. And put dynamite charges in the water to blow up and down the beach into the water to get that boom, 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 boom. And so what was the question?
Well, it was more, were you hesitant when you first heard
I was
about
very
it,
hesitant.
So, yeah.
And so they said, and I read it, and I realized that he got these powers, and he didn't want them. He went to Tina McGee to get rid of them. I thought, well, that's interesting. It wasn't, Hugh Hollywood hero. It's reluctant hero. And then his brother gets killed by a motorcycle gang that's putting red splotches on the buildings. And then when my brother's killed, that's the motivating event to assume my powers. And then I go to Tina and say, no, I do want these powers, and I want a cowl to cover my face, and I want my own symbol to strike terror into their hearts, and I'm going to avenge my brother's death. And I was like, okay. I'm like, these are themes of classical drama. Something you guys knew all along. In fact, I always say at my Q&As, aren't you proud of yourselves? The rest of the entertainment world has finally caught up with you, right? Give yourselves a hand. So after that, I was sucked into this incredible experience. I mean, we were shooting on the backlot at Warner Brothers. It had been changed back from Burbank Studios to Warner Brothers. You'd come over Borum Boulevard, you see the big water tower with the Warner Brothers insignia, and I knew, God, I have a parking space on that lot. and we had 2 big studios. Some of our sets are still standing. You know, the police department set. And it was a whirlwind from the 3rd week in August through the 2nd week in May. And it was like a runaway train, man. We were just trying to keep up, but it was exciting.
It was a huge undertaking for Warner Brothers and CBS at the time, wasn't it? Because there hadn't really been much like it beforehand.
Yeah, we came on the heels of Batman. The treatment of The Flash, according to, as Danny Bilson explains it, and the Batman movie were in development at the same time. So there was a consensus forming around the way to tell these stories, to ground them in edge and dark and reality, and say no to the general audience. You don't make fun of these stories. You're going to take them seriously, and here's how. And so it was fun to be at the cutting edge of that whole thing. And 24 years later, it was immensely gratifying. I told people it took 24 years to get a 2nd season to see it go full mainstream, you know.
But it must still like make you so proud now to look back on it and to see that like there's still there is actually like a cult fan following of the series as well.
Well, you consider that in 1990, basically there were 3 in the States. There were 3 networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC. So your choices were more limited, which meant your audience share was larger, you know, in those days. It had to be. You had to carry a tremendous audience in order to have a hit. And, you know, our premiere, we had 17 million people watching. Yeah. You know, the show today is a hit with 6 or 7 million, and that's great because we have 300 channels. Everybody's doing original content. I was on a TV show last night here at 6 o'clock show.
On TV3, yeah.
With a guy who had 2.4 million hits on his YouTube channel, and so now he's a star, and I think it's great. There's room for everybody. But in those days, we carried quite a few people, and when the DVD was released in 2006, those people were still there. And they were still there when I walked on the set in 2014. Yeah.
Must have been lovely.
It is amazing. Yeah. I tell you, the last shot of the original show at 4 o'clock in the morning in Southeast Los Angeles, it was me and Mark Hamill. I ripped those wings off and threw them in the air, and I swore I would never get into another superhero suit. Never say never. Of course, Mark Hamill almost lost his mind. He was like jumping over cables and looking behind trash cans. Don't let him get away. I think he still has the wings. Let's get up. Let's get up. Yeah.
So while we're walking, in between, you know, Flash 1.0 and Flash 2.0, you were famed for playing another famous dad in Dawson's Creek.
I don't want to wait.
When you were reading that script and you were like meeting all the cast members and things like that, was there any inkling as to, well, what was to come really for them all? Because that was one of the TV shows of a generation.
Yes, yes. I wasn't the original dad. Some of you may know that was cast. And I was off in Moab, Utah, in the deserts of the Utah, playing a movie with David Carradine and Lee Majors and Kathy Lee Crosby and Michelle Green called The Last Treasure of Dos Santos. And it's probably the last movie you will ever see. But anyway, I came back in town. They decided to go a different way with the father, and they presented me with a pilot presentation, which was about a 12-minute short-form version to sell to the network. And they said, watch it and see if you relate to it. And I was watching this show for young people, and it was smart. It was smartly written. The creek, the way it was shot, the creek was actually a character in the show, you know. Water was everywhere, and we had these young kids, for one reason or another, Dawson, whose parents were going through problems, Joey, whose father was an alcoholic, Jen, who comes in town, she was been the bad girl. For one reason or another, there was a certain amount of alienation. It wasn't Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you know. And the language was so beautiful, and I thought, wow, I haven't seen anything like this. It's difficult to remember that back in 1997, we started shooting that show 20 years ago. And that's the second half of my career. When the second half of your career is 20 years ago, you know you're in trouble. Better get busy. Yeah, and I thought, wow, no, I totally relate to it. It was the same feeling I had when I went to New York and they couldn't find the guy to play Jerry Evans. And they said, go see the Irish cast, which I was terrified to do because I heard how brilliant they were. And I was sucked into the world of that play, and it was amazing, and the sisters, and he was wonderful, the actor who was playing the part they wanted me for. But at the same time, I realized, yeah, I would do that a little bit differently, or yeah, I think I could bring my own self to that. In other words, if I'd seen the tape of Dawson's dad and gone, well, that's all you can do with that part. There's no way I can improve upon it, or make it my own, then there would be no point. But I was like, yeah, I could do this. It's very, very funny. James Van Der Beek went around telling people, my dad is the Flash.
Was he a fan of the series before?
Apparently.
There you go. Because it's been said that you and he actually had quite a lovely bond on set as well. Do you still keep in touch with him now, or?
I haven't talked to James in years. For a while, we were like the archetypal American family. Mary Margaret, who played my wife, kept in touch, and we would send messages back and forth through the mother. But no, I'd love to see him now. He's come quite a long way.
Because his character at times is there's been lots of pop culture articles going out about how he was actually probably one of the most unlikable characters in the show. Were there any times when you're reading the script and being like, oh my God, if this was my kid, I'd be giving him a clip around the ear or something like that?
No, because particularly at the beginning, you have to understand that Kevin Williamson was Dawson. In fact, it's been suggested that Katie Holmes' character, Joey, and Dawson were two different sides of Kevin Williamson's character. But Dawson was an incredibly difficult character to write because he was so quirky. But there was an element of truth to it, and I did bond. Mitch was very different from Dawson, but obviously loved him very deeply, uniquely for who he was. Of course. Toward the end, when he drank all the milk, I didn't have any milk for the baby. I had to go out and get it, and the fateful ice cream cone, and the rest is history. But
of course, we're playing Mitch, Dawson's dad. We have Bastian's dad from Neverending Story as well.
Bastian's dad.
And then it comes almost full circle, and you get to play Barry's dad.
Yeah, but I did a detour through Teen Wolf, and
yes.
I want to apologize to everyone. Daniel Sharman. First time I slammed down and swiped all the plates and he came over to me and he said, man, you were scaring the blank out of me. And I was like, okay, well, you won't have to act. He was a great guy. I had a great time doing that, but abusive dad, that's tough.
So when you were first hearing whisperings of The Flash getting a little bit of a revival on the screen, what were your thoughts? Were you keen to be involved, or was it suddenly you had a phone call and you're like, oh, interesting?
Well, it had fallen in and out of development so many times, hadn't it? Ryan Reynolds was going to be the Flash at one point. It was going to be a movie, then it wasn't. We found out different writers, and then it wouldn't happen. And so then I finally found out that the CW was getting a version together, and they were building it around this young man, Grant Gustin. I was really ready. 24 years is a long time to represent as a superhero. And in a way, although I'm really looking forward to what Ezra's going to do with the part, I regret that Grant hasn't had a longer run as the only Flash. But he's doing such a wonderful job. His place in the whole Flash history is assured.
Yeah, because there was a lot of fan outcry when it was announced that Grant wouldn't be portraying the Flash in the film. Were you disappointed for him in that sense as well, or
no? Because I think what he's doing is some of the best work that I've seen. He was 10 years younger than I was when I was doing the Flash, and his ability to be goofy and lanky and play romantic comedy and then break your heart. I wouldn't give anything for those Henry Barry scenes. I think it was, people said at the beginning, Jay Garrick, you need to be Jay Garrick. If they had offered me Jay Garrick right away, I probably wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't want to compete with myself 24 years ago, playing another superhero, and I wouldn't, on stage with a 24-year-old. And but they said, I heard about what Jeff Johns had done to the Allen family. You know, that Henry was wrongfully convicted of killing Nora in front of a 10-year-old Barry. And I said, well, they may come to me, they may not. And either way, I'm fine. But if they do come to me, that's the role. You know, everyone said, well, we want to see you pass the torch. And I said, I promise you, you'll get it. It's in the terms of a father-son blessing, but you'll get it. You'll get it in a richer and deeper way than if it had been quite so on the nose. Then they did the bait and switch.
Yeah. Which was a surprise to you as well, apparently.
It was a surprise. It was a surprise.
You just started getting fitted for all these costumes and heard whispers, and pretty much everyone knew except you.
Everyone knew except me. That happens sometimes in television. In this instance, happily, you know, I was being fitted for a shredded prison uniform, but Henry was already out of prison. So I was like, oh, well, we're doing a flashback. And then they said, of course, you'll be fitted for the Iron Mask separately. I'm like, the what? The Iron what? Oh, my God, you don't know? I said, no, I don't. You didn't hear it from me. You didn't hear it. So then I'm sitting offset in between takes with Jesse Martin and Grant. And they said, so did you hear what you're going to be doing next year? I said, yeah, I'm the man in the Iron Mask. I mean, I can't believe it. And they were like, yeah, that's all you know? I said, there's more? They said, you're the real Jay Garrick. I said, get out of town. How is that possible? But, yeah, it was... And then I talked to Greg Berlanti, who wrote Dawson's Creek after Kevin left. And I said, I'm hearing rumors about characters I may or may not be playing going forward. Can you clue me in? He's like, oh, my God, I thought they would have told you. But then we had a long discussion, and he spun out this amazing story that I would be killed at the end of the penultimate episode. I would be revealed in the next episode as the man in the Iron Mask, who is then revealed, who is Henry's doppelganger, and then revealed as the real Jay Garrick. And I said, man, that's just great storytelling and great manipulation of fan expectation, because I circled full circle around into the part that everyone wanted me to play to begin with. So I was like, take me out of it, Greg. That's just genius. In fact, I love our producers, our writers, Andrew Kreisberg, Todd and Aaron Helbing, Greg Berlanti, clearly, Jeff Johns, David Nutter, the director who, Emmy Award-winning director from Game of Thrones, who directed our pilot and set the tone of our episode's first season. I mean, they're such, beyond being brilliant writers and producers and directors, they love comic books. Yeah. And they loved The Flash. And they were fans of Flash 1.0, you know, when they were assistants, you know, on the back lot at Warner Brothers. And, you know, they grew up, you know, with that show. And so what I like to say, and I think the magic of the new show, and I can brag about it because it's Grant's show now. The magic of the new show is that the producers are writing a show that they want to see. They're not mass producing content for your consumption. They are so excited. They were like, oh man, I've got a surprise for you. I can't wait to tell you what. They said, Mark Hamill is coming back as the trickster. You know, they're just so excited themselves about what they're writing that I think that communicates. I hope, we have every indication that communicates.
Well, I know you're probably not going to be able to say too much to this next question, but season 4, excited?
I can't say it.
I know,
I have to tell you one thing very quickly. When they were doing Legends of Tomorrow, they were getting it together and shooting a small reel right at the beginning. And everyone was talking in Vancouver about this new show, Legends. So clearly, I thought everyone knows the title. It's out there. You know, nobody was making it a secret. I go to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and I'm in a Q&A, and I said, of course, there's this new show, Legends, and, you know, it's going to have so-and-so. Well, suddenly, everyone goes... I'm looking at the tops of like about 400 people's heads, you know, and then, you know, my Google alerts started blowing up, and pretty soon my good friend Suzanne Gomez, it's one big family in many ways. She was in publicity in Dawson's Creek. Now she's publicity at the CW, and she was like, John, We haven't announced the name of the new show yet. Could you cool it in your Q&As? I was like, oh my God. I was like, so no, I always go, la, 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 la.
That was a very polite way of saying zip it to you, by the way. And also, in the meantime, you do also have Powder Burns coming up as well.
Yes. It's an interesting, I went in 2010, I returned after about a 20-year absence from daytime to do a 4-month role on One Life to Live as Eddie Ford, the abusive father of the 3 Ford boys. And the oldest one, David Gregory, had time on his hands. He's like, what would I want to do? What creatively do I want to do? And he had always wanted to do an audio Western. And so he contacted me, and it's called Powder Burns. And we have about 7 episodes available on iTunes. I have flyers at my table. And we've had guests like Robert Vaughn guest starred just before he died. Ed Asner, we just had an episode drop that we got an award for dealing with issues like dementia and Alzheimer's, and in the context of a late 1800s Western in which I play Sheriff Burns, a blind sheriff. And the concept is really ingenious. Again, it wasn't my idea, so I can brag on it. It was see the Old West the way Sheriff Burns does, without sight. So it's an audio drama, and it's very atmospheric, and I'm about 23-minute episodes. So come get a flyer by my table, and check it out when you get a chance.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point for us to start opening it up to the floor. So if anyone has any questions, pop your hand up. We've got someone very eager over here, so if we can get the mic down to him.
He's got a gun, so yeah, we better call on him.
Security.
Security.
Yes, put the gun down before you ask the question.
Hi, Owen here. Remember we met earlier on. I just want to ask, do you think there'll be a chance that you and Mark Hamill will be working again in the near future? Because I'd love to see him doing the trickster again.
Oh, you guys are very sneaky, aren't you?
I did not prompt that question.
The only answer I can give you is la 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 la. Well, I hope so. You know what I always say? A friend of mine also said that. I can't take credit for it, but if you want to see it, tweet it. You know, Instagram it, because they do comb social media and they do listen to you guys, and they may not always do what you want, but they do hear what you say. So I always say, if you want the Flash Writers Room, CW Flash, you know, tweet it out there if you want to see more Jay Garrick.
Cool.
Or Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill,
right.
definitely.
I think we might take a question from over this side over here. So actually, the second row from the back of this section here.
Hi. Did you have any difficulty coming up with the how to portray both Jay and Henry Allen?
Are you an actor?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, I figured. That was the challenge, wasn't it? And there again, I love my producers. When I talked to Andrew Kreisberg about it, I was very clear that he had to be different. You know, yes, the Jay Garrick-Barry relationship is a very close one, a mentoring relationship that is very near and dear to comic book hearts over the decades. So I was dealing with something that I couldn't mess with too much. And yet, as Andrew Kreisberg put it, if I came out of the Iron Mask and was Henry Allen, where's the pathos in that? You know, originally when I came out of the Iron Mask, all bearded up, the line, and they're looking at me like I have 2 heads, and I don't know why. The line was originally written, "Is something wrong?" And I said, well, that's kind of what Henry would say. And they said, well, what do you want to say? I said, I want to say, what? You know, it's like, you know, it's like we go to the diner scene. It's like, yeah, I'm your father's doppelganger. Sorry about that. You know, it's like, and one of my favorite directors, Ralph Hemmicker, said, oh, I get what you're doing. He said, it's big boy rules now. Henry raised Barry from birth to 10 years old and was the soft shoulder. A very clever plot device. When we wanted to get the audience into the heart of Grant Gustin's Barry, he came to his dad. And he played those scenes like a child. The emotion very open, and Henry, what a great parent. It was a privilege to play. I had to start Jay with some distance, so we had somewhere to travel. And that's what I loved about doing that diner scene, which, did anyone catch the episode of Dawson's Creek playing on the bar? during that. I couldn't look at that, man. I'm like, that's too meta. Too many overlapping universes. I can't go there. But yeah, that it was, what kind of superhero do you want to be? And, yeah, I look like your dad. I'm really sorry about that. But here's the deal. Are you just going to throw a tantrum and change the timeline every time you break up with your girlfriend? That kind of thing, explaining the timeline. And the greatest thing I had to learn, and Grant had to learn me as actors, you'll appreciate this, all over again. We're running lines, and suddenly I have this it's not this bathing him in affirmation, which Henry did, which John tried to do, having played the Flash and figuring what his hopes and dreams were, and hoping he would have the commercial success that we just missed in 1990. We certainly had the critical success, but clearly went one season. And so I had a lot of investment in him, I just thought, I think he's so good. I just tried to just bathe him in affirmation as much as I could during those scenes and try to mirror back to him everything that I thought that he was contributing, as the new Flash in town. But Jay Garrick is like, put up or shut up, dude. Nuh-uh, no, yank, out of the Speed Force, got to talk to you. And we finally worked our way back around to some of the intimacy in between those two characters in our own right in the mid-season finale when Jay takes Wally's place in the Speed Force. And suddenly you see these two men and the bonding between them, which is as important in its own way, being both speedsters, as it was between Henry and Barry. It's like, you go do what you do, be the Flash. And he says, of course, I give him the helmet, and he says, I'm coming back, I'm getting you out of here. So that was kind of the template, for making those characters different. But I remember Grant and I were running lines as Jay Garrick the first time, and he just started laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing at, man? He said, it's just such a trip playing this scene with you. It's so different, which, if you stop and think about it, is perfect for where his character was. Looking and seeing his dad, but who is not his dad at all, And that was his confusion, dealing with his father's doppelganger sitting right there in front of him.
All right, I think we've got time for 2 more questions. So we have
only 2? This guy right here.
Guy here?
Yes.
So I just wanted to ask you about this Ezra Miller Flash movie. It's missing a director right now, like 2 have dropped out already. So if you could pick any director in Hollywood, who would you pick to catch the spirit?
Oh, man, that's such a good question, and I have no idea how to answer it. JC, who would you say to direct the Flash movie? The new Flash movie has lost 2 directors. David Nutter. David Nutter. Brilliant. Why didn't I think of that? Of course. David Nutter. Who better? Spectacle, intimacy. I've never met a director who works better with actors to pull out the performance that he wants. I got to tell you, he's so smart. During the arrest scene, Henry's arrest after the death of his mother, very upset, chaos, police everywhere, red tape. Barry comes back, the mother's dead, I'm being hauled off. He comes up to me before the take, and he says, you were my hero growing up, right? I'm like, and he goes, action! It's like, he's very, very clever. Yes, David Nutter, absolutely. Smart young man. Thank you. Good question.
All right, we actually have, don't think we've taken some from the back. So,
quickly.
Down the back, front row, black t-shirt.
Since you were Grant Gustin's dad in The Flash, whose other superhero dad would you like to be?
I wouldn't even have a second choice. Those scenes and the way they were written and everything that happened, and handing off the show, the franchise, to him in that way, with those scenes, were everything that I could have hoped for in writing and with an acting partner in Grant Gustin. And I don't have that. He would be my first, second, and third choice. So that's it. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but we do have to finish up
I
here.
can't believe it. I talk so much.
Well,
I'm
I think,
so
as,
sorry.
As you can tell from, the happy fangirl face on me, that I've really enjoyed this, and I hope you all have as well. So please, ladies and gentlemen, John Wesley Shipp.